Welcome to the Schoology tutorial. In this video, we will look at the syncing process between Schoology and eSchoolPLUS gradebooks. We'll talk about some best practices and some troubleshooting. This may be a lengthy video, so I apologize for that, but it is packed full of information. So before you start watching this video, make sure that you have gone through the eSchoolPLUS gradebook setup. So your categories and all those associated settings. There's a video for that, and you'll see in a little bit the URL for the official directions. The link to the videos will be in there. Also, set up the eSchoolPLUS app in Schoology, map your categories, and actually make sure that the gradebook is set up correctly in Schoology. There are two different gradebooks. If you haven't done that, please watch those videos and then watch this video. So here are the official directions for syncing. They're lengthy but very detailed. bit.ly BASD sync. And I will put that in the description of this video. If you make any changes to your gradebook settings after you went through video 1 and 2 and then you said, oh, I want to add a category, that's fine. Do it from eSchool, but then you need to go and kind of repeat the process. You need to go to the eSchool app in Schoology, click on configuration, make sure that new category shows up, and then save the configuration so that things work appropriately. And if you use the sync process, enter all grades into Schoology. So even if it's an assignment that you're really not collecting anything digitally, but you want it to be in the gradebook, you add it to Schoology. You create a Schoology assignment, turn off the student submissions. I'm going to do that shortly, show you how to do that. And then you would just enter in the scores in the assignment in the gradebook and then sync it. One big note is creating grade columns in Schoology will not work with the sync. It won't calculate the scores for the students during the marking period. They'd have to wait till the last day to know their grade. Okay, so I'm going to make an assignment and show you some of the stuff I was talking about. So I'm going to go to my physics course, and really just to reiterate, the things that can be synced are assignment grades, things on discussions if it's graded, or test quiz. So I'm going to create an assignment here. I'm just going to click here, click on Add Assignment to show you the parts that you need to have filled out. So I need to have a name. Okay. I'm not going to get into it here. I'm going to put a description. Now, the description is not necessary for syncing purposes, but to create an environment where students understand what's going on in Schoology, put a description. Make sure they understand what this is. The description does come over to eSchoolPLUS. You can make it a Google Drive assignment. That's fine. You need a due date. Okay, and you need to have that due date on a date your class meets. So I'm going to say the 24th. Now keep in mind, these are like the future, so maybe I should, kind of think more short term here. So it calculates. Give it a point value. Give it a category. So I'm going to actually give it this, I call it a test, and it's a homework. But I'm going to give it a homework category. Note, if you use ungraded, that means it won't count as a grade. Therefore, it won't go to the grade book. That's one way of making sure that something you put in here doesn't count, is give it that. Otherwise, you want to give it one of these categories. So I'm going to click on homework. I can use any scale or rubric. Grading options. When I go there, it shows me the marking period. So it picks up on the date that you're making the assignment. What marking period are you in? It inherits that. Now, here's where you would turn off submissions. So say this was one of those non-digital assignments that you wanted to add to the gradebook, but you didn't want them to submit it through Schoology. Turn off submissions here, and then it gets rid of that button so students don't see it and get confused and don't know what to do. I'm going to turn it on though. And then this is how you publish it. You want to make sure this is published if this is going to count as a grade. Because if this is unpublished and you sync it, it goes over to eSchool unpublished. And you might say, well, big deal, I can publish it there. Well, you can, but if you change anything about an assignment in eSchool that you've synced over there, Schoology to eSchool, and then you change it in eSchool, it breaks the sync. You won't be able to sync it again. You'll have to delete it from eSchool and start over and resync it over. So make sure it's published. If you unpublish it, it's going to kind of mess with the grade calculation. Click on Create. And here it is. Okay, so I'm going to go into the gradebook and let's take a look at what's going on there. So Mickey Mouse has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 grades. Okay, I'm just going to give Mickey a pretty respectable grade here. Just add it in. Okay. And then I'm going to go to sync. Now you can sync from 2 different places, but here is a really convenient place. Right here, sync changes. Sync changes is very helpful when you add an assignment or when you change the actual grades, or you give a student an exception. Okay, like excused, incomplete, missing. Now the E will not come over. Okay, so that's actually an issue. Just giving you that information right up front. Okay, so I would click on Save Changes to eSchoolPLUS, so I'm going to do that. Now, a syncing is not instantaneous. It needs time, especially if it's during the school day. And so I'm going to click on this sync status log and see what's going on. So it's 8:35, and it looks like I have, I'm just going to tell you I've been playing with this course a little bit to prepare it. So you might see successful, but then there's an error. And it's because, it's kind of like it's got the status from before. So here's the assignment. The last time it was successful. So these two times, or these two guys, weren't successful. The status, so it's saying there's an error. And the action, this is actually how you would sync an individual assignment. What I would call a force sync, because this will change, like when you change the name of the assignment, that kind of stuff, that's when you want to do this particular type of sync. Anything about the assignment, like the properties, the total points, the date, it doesn't really pick it up with the sync changes, but it does when you do this individual one. So I have 2 errors. This one says the due date for this assignment is not valid according to the school calendar in eSchoolPLUS. To sync, change the assignment due date and sync again. Okay, I'll show you how to get around that. And then I'm hovering over this error and it says a category is required. To sync, first assign a category to this assignment, then sync again. So that may be the one. I'm thinking there's one that's ungraded. So I'm going to click on Done. Show you a great place to do some troubleshooting, and that's with Bulk Edit. So I'm going to click on Bulk Edit, these 3 dots, and I can see my gradebook in a whole different way. So I'm seeing my assignments. I'm seeing if it's published or not, and here I'm seeing one that's not published. I'm seeing the categories, the max points, the factor, the rubric, due date, and then the marking period. So here I'm seeing no due date here, and that's a problem. So I'm going to give it 1. Okay. Then this one looks okay. This one is ungraded. This, I think, is the one that said that it didn't have a category. So I'm going to give it a category because I want this one to go over. This one is not published. So I'm going to have to publish it because I want it to appear in the gradebook and be included in the calculations. And then it looks like it's okay here. Now, this is where I would change the marking period. So say if I imported a lot of assignments, like I copied an entire course, at the beginning of the course, I did that during marking period 1. Everything that was copied on that day would be marked marking period 1, if it was during marking period 1 when I copied it. If I want some of these things to be marking period 2, marking period 3, I would change it here. I could go to each assignment and change it too, but that's kind of tedious because You may have to do that at the beginning if you're not sure what the assignment is, but here's a really quick way of doing it. Make sure it's in the right marking period. Click on Save Changes. I'm going to go back to the course. Okay, now I can show you here the other place where you can sync. So I was in the gradebook and I synced. I could go here to this eSchoolPLUS app. And it's showing me, kind of a different kind of status. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to sync changes. And then it shows me that they're all queued up, meaning they're in line to be synced. Okay, so while I'm waiting for that sync, I'm going to go back here and talk about a few things. So syncing, and Laura Martin made some of these slides. I want to thank her for that. Schoology syncs, it's one way. So, keep that in mind. And once these grades are synced to eSchool, they're there permanently unless you manually remove them. So, this goes to another best practice. If you sync an assignment from Schoology to eSchoolPLUS, then you change your mind. And then you say, you know what, I'm going to get rid of that assignment, and I'm going to delete it from Schoology. In order to get rid of it from eSchoolPLUS, you must go to eSchoolPLUS and delete the column. There is no sync that deletes an assignment. It doesn't have that capability. The Schoology sync will not delete an assignment from eSchoolPLUS. So when you delete an assignment in Schoology, it will not delete that assignment in eSchool. And thus, you may have something in eSchool that you don't want. You need to really monitor those gradebooks. You save a lot of time with the sync, but you definitely should be checking. So here's an error that I don't think I'll be able to share with you. And if I do a sync, and if I see something called this assignment belongs to a category that is not mapped, that means I didn't set up my eSchoolPLUS app in Schoology, Video 2. I didn't do that. So that's why that says that. Want to talk about sync changes or individual sync. Okay, so I've been doing the sync changes, and it's that, that circle at the top, or that sync changes button. That's really helpful when you create a new assignment, you enter scores, or you change a score for a student, or you make an exception, like you say it's missing, that kind of thing. You sync individually when you make changes to the actual assignment itself, like the point value, due date, marking period, and category, and that's when you can do each individually. So let's take a look at how that works as we go back and check on our sync. So I'm going to do a refresh here. Okay, so those were all successful except this one. Okay, and this is telling me that the grade or the date is still not okay. So I'm going to go to the gradebook, and that's the Motion Lab. Okay, it says July 28th here. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to eSchoolPLUS. And remember, I was just talking about individual changes? That's what I needed to do here. When you click on this, I had changed that date, remember, to, it was in June. So I changed it to a good date, but it didn't pick it up when I clicked on Save Changes. So I'm going to have to do an individual sync. I actually think of this as like a force sync, because if you see that there's issues with that assignment, I advise you to just do that assignment, try it again. Yeah, it didn't like that. So I'm going to just let it sit there. And then I'm going to go to the gradebook and check that out, what actually came over. And I'm actually seeing, something I see when I'm doing these demo videos, when I'm playing around in a course and I delete assignments and add them. I see sometimes there's some little glitches. This, I think, is happening because of the demo video and the amount of times I'm adding and deleting assignments. So what I would recommend anybody seeing this type of behavior is to force sync each of them, each of the ones that you see you're having problems with, and I'm just going to try them all. Okay, so that we can see the actual scores go over. You may not encounter this a lot, but I'm encountering it during this demo, and I think it's valuable for you to see if you encounter it on your end. So I'm going to refresh. Okay, so that picked that up. I'm going to refresh that. And I have these assignments in, and so it did fix that one. But this one, I'm going to go to the Motion Lab assignment. I'm going to go to Gradebook. I'm going to go to Bulk Edit. And I'm going to, I picked a Saturday. Look at that. I don't meet on a Saturday. Remember eSchool. So I picked Monday, and I'm going to save changes. Good. And now I'm going to go back to the other way. So I can go up here and sync it. So I could sync it down here or up here. I'm not going to click on Save Changes, because remember when I change the date on an assignment, this doesn't do anything. I'm going to click on View Sync Status Log, and then I'm going to force sync this one, because I changed the date on it. Okay, I'm going to click on Done. Click on it. Okay, it's queued up, and that's good. That's a good sign. When it's a bad date, you usually know right away. Okay, I'm going to click on it again. I'm going to refresh here, see if I see anything. Okay, not yet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, so I have 6 assignments here. And 5 up, and there, it's successful. So I'm going to go to the gradebook. I'm going to refresh, and there she is. So there I have it. So I'm just going to look at the average just to see what's going on here. So it's August 10th. So I have stuff in the future, right? Because I'm just playing around. So my grade is not calculating really yet. With all of these assignments. In Schoology, it just calculates it. Okay, so I have an 80.77 there. And here I have a 77.4. It's not calculating everything because eSchool, it doesn't like things in the way off future. Okay, remember that? So that's why there might be a discrepancy in your gradebook. There are lots of reasons why. But that's a big one. So I think we talked about that. Some other things you want to check is if you're having problems, okay, go back to the basics. Go to eSchoolPLUS. Make sure the categories are set up properly. You're using the right kind of grading, total points, weighted. Which one are you using? Do you have that missing scores from calculated, selected? The exclusion of that, or are you counting those blanks as zeros? If it's counting blanks as zeros, you may have a big discrepancy between each system. You need to use this setting. So let's talk about how do we get around that. So if you're a teacher that says, but I really, really want to have it count. So I'm just going to remind you that it needs to be set up this way. Okay, not the other way when you're counting them as zeros. Okay, what you do then in Schoology is if you want to, count them as zeros, Okay, you could do one of two things. You could set all grades for all students to 0. Okay. Now, you kind of have to keep track of how you want to do this, because you may literally give a student a 0 because they didn't keep it, they cheated, whatever. You would have to figure out your system. You could set them all to 0, or you could count them missing. Missing is a way of giving it a 0. So this might be a better way. It actually puts a 0 in there and it marks it as missing. So it's kind of like saying, yeah, you didn't hand it in, but you have a 0 because you didn't hand it in. Okay, so that's what you would do, for your assignments in Schoology. I know it's not the way you want it to be, but in exchange for all that time you save by not having to key in each individual grade, I think this doesn't take a whole lot of time. Okay, so back to what we were doing here. And keeping in mind that eSchoolPLUS, the best practice is to change all the grades from Schoology and then sync it. If you go into eSchoolPLUS and change something, like a student's score, anything, one little thing, it breaks the sync, that little tether between Schoology and eSchool for that assignment. And what you have to do is delete the assignment and then resync it again. And something else I want to mention is, are there any roster changes? So meaning, was a student dropped? And the way that affects things is when you want to delete an assignment, say you broke the sync, you would want to make sure that you delete all the assignment scores, even from kids who have dropped. Okay, make sure that you check your eSchool app if you have problems. Did you actually set it up? You have to approve it when you set it up. You have to configure things, and you need to map those categories out. Then you want to check your Schoology gradebook setup. Make sure there's no extra categories. Check those final grade settings. Make sure it's alpha for the regular courses and then OSN for the Encore or the citizenship grades. And then make sure that your grades are visible. Those assignments are visible. If not, it's going to affect the calculated grade. Then, just to remind you, go to bulk edit in your gradebook to make changes that you need to. It's a really great place to go. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. There are lots of different situations that we come across. So I just want to re-emphasize that going to this document is probably your best bet. All right, thanks.